Response video to Fred. Conference report. Yeah. The Emperor. Yeah. It's kind of look like the Emperor. Not one of the Jedis, but whatever. Looking thing. Anyway, yeah, I got a lot of stuff written down here. Too much, I would almost argue. So, I guess I'll just state in the beginning what I see as the vision difference here. I'm basically arguing that there's a simple ethical reality that exists, and it's really simply defined and described by the acceptance of a couple of established themes or theories or ideas. The idea that the universe is just this physical phenomenon, that there's this process of whatever you want to call it, an elemental condensation that takes place, that the condensation mold grows on it, to use a biological metaphor to describe biology. But yeah, it gets moldy. The universe gets moldy, and the mold does this thing that we call human, or that does this thing called worm, or bug, or all this other stuff. And most of this stuff that does this animated DNA thing, you know, that's this DNA mechanism thing, yeah, 99.99999% of it is just machines. It's just biological machines. It's little chemical machines. It's all they are. They don't think, they don't feel, they don't want, they don't desire. They don't do anything we consider part of our living structure. They just plow. They just dig, they just move, they just wiggle, they just squirm, they just propel, they just motorboat around. And yet it seems like there's got to be something more to it, because the boats are doing stuff in a really complex harbor here, where they're, you know, consuming each other and doing this, you know, reproducing and all this other stuff, and we definitely amorphize and see something more in there. But it's just machines. It's just a robot war. Even when we had a TV show with the robot wars, right? I mean, people would put paintings on them and smiley faces and sharpie teeth, and they do all kinds of things because that's what people do. They tend to look at it and try to make it into a personality, because that's what we do psychologically. And so again, my argument is whether we're going to be philosophers or we're going to be we're just going to spew our psychology at each other, which to me doesn't sound like doing much more than, you know, collect some of your sweat and throw it at each other. We're just throwing our biology at each other. We're throwing our DNA at each other. We're throwing psychological phenomena that has nothing to do with being reasonable or rational or honest or intellectual or sensible, any of those things. It just has to do with being some sort of animal. And that's just plainly and preposterously, that the game is dumb as it is, but it's even dumber if we're going to concede that that's some way to play it. If that's the honest way to play the game, then there's no point, in my opinion. Blow the game up, smash the game, kill the game any way you can. There's no cure for a game that stupid that could be worse than the disease. There's just no way the cure could be worse than the disease if all human beings are going to say is it doesn't matter what the fucking truth is. If all they got is we're psychological animals, we're monkeys, we can't do any better, well then fuck the goddamn monkeys. Alright? They have way too much power. They're playing with something way too fucking powerful, way too fucking important to sit there and say they have a right to be incompetent assholes. They have a right to be wrong on purpose. They have a right to sanction being wrong. Alright? It's just not excusable. Sorry, that's just bullshit. And so the disagreement here is that I'm arguing that this truth about the fundamental core of this existence thing being corrupt, rotten, shitty, is just a fact. Okay? It's not self-evident, but yeah, it's made evident. If you're going to accept evolution, you're going to accept physics, you're going to accept chemistry and biology, this is the conclusion of it, is that the origins are shit. Alright? It's a shit engine. It makes fucking gladiators. It makes machines capable of overwhelming other machines, not in a fair fight, not in an honorable way, and certainly not in anything called efficient. There's no strive to be efficient or to give a shit about how much waste there is. None whatsoever. It's not a consideration that nature could give a rat's ass about. The commodity of suffering and feelings has no meaning to it. And it's to embrace or endorse any element of that is, again, a disease worse than any fucking cure. If that's going to be the disease that you're going to let own the psychology and the mind of the human animal, then there's no cure harsh enough to wipe out this disease. There's no solution that can't be defended. None. Because it's just way too dangerous. Alright, so that's the premise of the video. That's the disagreement. And Fred's, to paraphrase his argument, it just doesn't look that bad. You know, it's bad, but it's not bad enough. I can't drip too much in my panties over this stuff. It just doesn't fret me too much. Let's just fiddle with it. Let's just fuck with it. It's, like the TV, little lines on the screen. That's all. It's not, it's annoying, but it's not a big deal. Yeah. It was really bad in the past. We really paid a horrific price. Oh, yeah. And there's lots of suffering now, but it's even though it doesn't matter that the percentages are getting better, but the absolute numbers are getting worse. Some reason to keep thinking it's going to somehow resolve itself into some sort of edible pancake in the end somehow. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's not going to be just botulism and horror. It's going to be something good enough to justify it. And whatever I don't want to be patronizing, and it's not a it's a hostile paraphrase at minimum. But that's what it sounds like. It just sounds like you're making excuses for ignorance. Like this ignorance is special ignorance, and this ignorance is allowed. So these other ignorances of racism and slavery or all this other crap, these ignorances are, well, blah, 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 blah. Somehow, we got to do something to stop that. You can't just let that go on. You can't just say, well, it's just a matter of opinion. You're entitled. Again, I just don't. I can't find any logic in it, and so maybe you're that way on vegetarianism. You just don't feel any urgency to fix any of it, to do anything much about it. You seem a little more vocal on a subject like that, so that's good. I mean, I'm glad to get whatever we can get out of people in terms of humiliating assholes. Yeah, but this idea that you can just sit there and say it doesn't matter. It's okay. We'll just live next door to it. We'll just I'm just doing my thing. I'll let it do its thing. This idea too that it's you're almost back to the popularity contest, because the vast majority believe this, that somehow they have to be tickled in some different way. The point is, you have to get from ignorance to truth, and there's lots of ways to get there. That I'll concede. Maybe it's worth waiting for some inspired moment where everybody sheds a little tear and gets it. Maybe it's worth waiting for somebody to construct a more perfect argument, and it just annihilates. It cuts right through the bullshit and gets right to the point, and they all see it, and they all voluntarily give up their personal advantage, give up the thing they're living for, the nonsense. But history has sort of taught us that that's usually not the course of things. If you want to, because these things, they're like viruses. Ideas are like viruses, and bad ideas will grow into colonies, and they'll take over. They'll migrate through things, and they'll be very corrosive and very invasive into what they move in. There's like invasive species. They'll wander across the ocean and fall on a new shore, and they'll basically kill everything that exists and take it over. And there's a real problem with that in terms of ideas and the way they're growing, in the way cultures are now evolving in that direction. Christians were bad, but a world run by Muslims is a really scary idea. Alright. So it's more about just this argument that if you're going to say you believe these certain premises, I'm saying those premises lead to an obvious conclusion that's got to be in a statement. At least it's got to be made that you point your finger at and you say that's wrong. And you say, I'm not going to sit there and placate. I'm not going to call it something it's not. It's unethical. It's wrong. It's stupid. It's ignorant. It's irresponsible. It's reckless. It's sloppy. It's bullshit. I'm going to call it bullshit at minimum. That's the least I can do, is call the bullshit line and say, there's some bullshit over here. Hello, bullshit police. Here's some bullshit here. That's not asking too much, I don't think. Alright, so now getting further into the conversation. I'll play some of your clips after I do my notes, I guess. So this might be a long video. We'll see how the camera holds out. What does it say? 10 minutes. Wow. Fuck. The introduction is 10 minutes. Damn it. Alright, anyway, so give value I put in a big box. These are so there's a lot of themes in the videos that we're talking here, and these themes are subjects in themselves. They really deserve 10 minutes of them set for they deserve 10 hours. They deserve beating them to death because they're big ideas. So the give value thing, two things. That's the way you sort of phrased it. And the feeling creatures value. And that's where it gets kind of tricky, because you're implying that the value is in a perception of a value, the recognition of a value. And my argument is more fundamental. The sentience creates the value. And you kept using words like sovereignty and autonomy, and those aren't words are arbiter of value. I don't even, those words don't mean shit to me. They don't have anything to do with feeling, in my opinion. Feeling generates value. It makes it like gold. So when you feel bad, you're making, black gold, and when you feel good, you're making white gold, if you want to make it that simple. But these are real. This is now the thing. The thing has now been created by you experiencing a feeling, a sensation, a state of mind. So states of mind and feeling sentient organisms generate, the plus and the minus, and then you add up the pluses and the minuses, and you get the solution, the product. But what we, philosophically recognize as value is a whole different subject. And so I'm just saying there's no autonomy for the feelings themselves. The fact that you feel bad, like a rat could go by and it could make somebody hysterically upset. What has value is their upsetness. What doesn't have value is their opinion that rats are something to get upset about. That has no value. So the opinion of value doesn't have value. The sensation of value has value. So if it causes you a harmful sensation, your sensation has value. Why you feel it is kind of irrelevant. And certainly, so there's no individual sovereignty, in my opinion, for dumb opinions. Opinions live in a different world. Opinions of what is valuable in the world, like whether bananas are worth, how many bananas are worth how many oranges, or how many, balancing the equation kind of arguments. Those have nothing to do with any sort of individual sovereignty. That argument doesn't happen on the individual level. The individual doesn't get to make up the truth. It doesn't get to do the math individually. Alright, there's a fact to the math. Alright, there's a truth to the math. And we know it has, at least, as I've stated, is we can at least define the boundaries. We can define what's decidedly on one side of the fence and what's decidedly on the other side of the fence in many cases, in most cases, in 99.999% of cases. We can do this beyond a reasonable doubt thing and establish certain values as truths. And they're just not negotiable with any individual sovereign who wants to raise his hand and say, I like having AIDS. Fuck you, you're stupid. They said we don't know how to negotiate with stupidity and ignorance. And so the arbiter is the intelligence. The arbiter is knowledge. The arbiter is logic. Not individuals, but these things have to be there. It has to be logically coherent. It has to be knowledgeably informed. It has to be intelligently constructed as an opinion. It cannot be an opinion because the tree told me, because God told me, because of some bullshit, because I have faith, because I have a gooey little feeling that tells me I'm right. None of that shit means a goddamn motherfucking thing. It doesn't qualify an opinion. You have to qualify it through this process of filtering through these things we do understand, which are information, knowledge, logic, and an intelligent process. That's what it has to be filtered by. It has to survive intelligent scrutiny. And if it can't do that, then it doesn't get to raise its fucking hand. Okay? It just gets, if it fucking starts heckling the truth, if it starts heckling progress, then it gets kicked the fuck out. Alright? Or shot in the head. Fuck it. I mean, I think there's lots of cures that may seem harsh and draconian, but no, they're direct and simple. And it's certainly it's certainly in a world where, again, people are causing so much harm with their optimism and their hope, and their inability to to take risk out of the equation, to just eliminate it now, quick, fast, get it over with, decisive action immediately. Shoot the rabid dog. You don't play with it. You don't try to medicate it. You don't try to have a conversation with it. And you certainly don't let it bite a bunch of other people and animals and spread the fucking rabies. So anyway, so it may seem harsh in the short term that you're just saying, get it done, get it over, get it fast, get it done. Might be harsh, but it's rational, sensible, logical. And yeah, that's just the truth. Sad but true. Alright, let's see. As liver as thinker. As liver is thinker, what? Completely. Can't be rational completely. I guess that's... So you're arguing that we can't be, but the point is, I think that is the obligation. If you're going to be a philosopher, if you're going to get in here and start making opinions, you're going to be subject to having those opinions scrutinized and the obvious contradictions or the bullshit pointed out. And that, so in a sense, it's going to have to be complete if we're going to have a real game. Now we can play a fake game. We can say that somebody can make up their own rules and go on the soccer field and pretend they have the right uniform and pretend they have the official shoes and pretend all that crap, but they really have brass knuckles and they really have, steel toes in their shoes and all that. And that's just bullshit. And it's just pretending to pretend that's not just bullshit. Alright, you got to play the game by these are the rules of rationality. There's rules of rationality. You got to play by them. And so all this mush, in a sense, should be weeded out. It should be noticeable. It should sit there and just say, beep, 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 I'm bullshit. Because it should stick out. And what I'm saying is your bullshit is showing. I can see your bullshit. You can't say you agree with the premises. You can't say you understand that there's no chance that there's some God that, contrived all this crap. And that somehow you mix all this up and say, well, just keep it, status quo is okay. Just keep status quoing for another million years. And you've won. No, that's fail. And to argue, and other little symbolisms, these symbolisms like the cure is worth the disease. Well, what's the cure? What's the horrid cure that I'm proposing? Oh, that we might point our finger and shame a few pregos, that we might tell a couple of poor people that they're irresponsible assholes. Oh, God forbid. Yeah, that we should fucking shame them with their ignorance and tell them to get the fuck out of the car until they learn how to fucking drive. Oh, horror, horror. So yeah, I'm just saying that I can call bullshit on raising that kind of boogeyman. The old, whoa, you talked about Goodwin because I brought up the Holocaust. Well, guess what? I didn't bring up the Holocaust to make a Hitler point. I brought up the Holocaust to make a suffering point. So I could have used smallpox. So would that be Goodwin's law? The fact that we as human beings should use horrendous suffering should be a reference point. And maybe it should be in every motherfucking conversation we ever goddamn have. It's sort of important that people, millions or billions of them even, go through horrific suffering. Well, maybe that should be a reference point. Maybe that should be relevant to almost every fucking subject we have. The fact that human beings are capable of doing this to each other, maybe that could be relevant to every motherfucking subject there is. Maybe Adolf Hitler isn't relevant, but the fact that suffering seems to be something human beings are really goddamn good at creating, at generating, maybe that could be relevant. So yeah, I call bullshit on that. So yeah, I mean, you catching the Goodwin thing, when you're using something as blanket as the cure is worse than the disease. Yeah, you can do that about every goddamn thing anybody ever suggests. Every single thing that anybody ever suggests. And look what we've got for that scare tactic that's been used, the fear mongering that's used to scare people away from things. You don't get any good out of that. You know, we could have, you know, saved billions of dollars just in potato farming. But no, everybody got hysterical because it was a genetically mutated potato. Scary, scary. And so, yeah, McDonald's didn't want to touch the old genetically mutated potato, even though it was environmentally green all over the place, even though it eliminated the use of tons and billions of dollars worth of pesticides, even though it was all good in every other way. No, because it was made in a laboratory. I mean, a tiny little piece of it was made in a laboratory to tell insects you're not going to have a good time if you lay your eggs near this potato. Nah, fuck it. Fuck progress. Because we can scare people with the scary progress cure. So I'm just saying that is kind of lame. So yeah, you haven't exactly pointed out how me expecting intellectuals to be intellectually honest and take their philosophy to its rational conclusion and take responsibility for what they have accepted, which is a unintelligent design. Unintelligent design. Unintelligent design. That's the fucking core of the human race existence. That's its fucking origin. Alright, not to take any responsibility for that or account for that or to say anything about that. On bullshit. Alright, so, yeah. Alright, murder versus birth. Yeah, well, you know, so you say it's different, but you say they have both have moral weight, and they both are, you know, almost a parallel significance. But somehow it's different. Well, I'm saying that the difference isn't anything but the fact that somebody has a perception that they say they're qualified to make the decision. That's what we're really talking about, right? The person committing the experiment. So if I know somebody's an asshole, I just know it. I mean, they're a fucking asshole. I know, I can see when I run the model in my head that if they don't exist on this planet, it's going to be like really good. It's like getting rid of Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, it's just, yeah, okay, we don't need that fuck. You know, Wayne Gacy, yeah, we can just slide him into the non-existent pile, and you know, 38 people have a better life, and maybe they cure cancer or something. But you know, you never know how it's going to work out, and you can see that point, and I can see that point. We can't figure out the real distinctions between this cure and the disease, and which one is worse. And it's hard to play the whole future game out because there's 7 billion players, and there's all these permutations, and it's really hard to do. But again, I'm going to argue that we know the things 5 feet from the edge of the fence. There is a pile of shit that's too close to the fence to call, but there's a ton of shit also that's far enough away from the fence on one side or the other that we can put in a category of let's let that happen and let's stop that from fucking happening. There's lots of shit in those categories, and I'm saying that the stop that from happening category, the, you know, reckless reproduction is a bad thing that we know. And we know that the people who are making the decision to conduct the experiment have no clue, as you've conceded. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They have no goddamn idea. They're completely running on psychology. So it's essentially allowing chimpanzees to drive on the highway. It's essentially just saying, let's give license to it because as a mammal, it's a mammal and it has eggs and sperm, and so go ahead, let it play. No, fuck that. Force people to be more than that. Force people to prove they have some kind of competence, some kind of sense of responsibility for what they are going to do, what they are committing the world to. So fuck that. So back to the good man doing nothing thing. Again, I think you just sort of copped out. This is again, it's, you know, what are you being asked to do? You can't be asked to say, yeah, those people are assholes. You can't be asked to at least say slavery is an ignorant concept. That reproduction is a selfish, ignorant, biological process conducted by people for no good reason, and there is no good reason. I even wrote down good and reason in you know, one circled and one underlined, because this is really the whole game, isn't it? What is good reason? You know, rational, good logic, good thought process. You know, that's not broken by some sort of stupid, idiotic delusion, some God delusion, or some DNA delusion, or some purpose delusion, or some hope delusion, or I feel lucky delusion. I mean, all of that shit should not be endorsed, and people should be, people who understand just how much that shouldn't be running the world should be able to raise their hand and say, anybody doing that is an asshole, and they really should stop doing it. This is an important fucking event in somebody's life when they're going to decide to initiate this experiment, and they really have to be able to make some sort of rational statement which acknowledges that they have some sense of responsibility for what they're committing something else to, for what they are risking. Shit. Alright, so well, after that, I did pose the question again. How bad does it have to get? Okay, you're worried about these goddamn cures? Well, god damn it, how bad does the disease have to get? How bad does the disease have to get before you say, alright, enough already? You know, how bad? How many people, well, Alzheimer's, I mean, like I said, go right down the list of all these horrors that people are living with, and you people just say, this is all okay, this is satisfactory, I can't, it's not bad enough, you know, to turn it off. This machine isn't making enough noise and spewing enough puke for me to turn it off. Well, how bad does it have to get before you'll pull the lever? I'd just like a description of your dystopia, that you finally will concede that, yeah, you know, if I could have pulled the lever back in 2012, I would have pulled the fucking lever, because this is way, 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 way too bad. This is way out of control. So exactly how, what proportion of the human race has to be in some zombie psychosis of horror and hell for you to finally say, yeah, this experiment just doesn't work. Human beings suck. I mean, how glow in the fucking dark does the earth have to be? How cockroachy does the average human's life have to be? How many humans have to be living in cockroachotopia? Fuck. Alright, anyway. Alright, so Goodwin, I don't know, you take my point on something there, so that was good, but, you know, taking my point when you argued against it, you know, it doesn't really go anywhere. Alright, the law that giant events, oh, okay, so I was just pointing out that Goodwin's law could be converted into the law that, you know, really big events, really big truths somehow should be relevant to every conversation. And yeah, the fact that human beings are capable of putting each other in prisons and slowly killing each other and torturing each other and, you know, enslaving each other and raping each other and stealing all everybody's money and all, yeah, the fact that they're able to do all this shit, these facts should be significant to almost every conversation you're going to have. They're relevant truths. Anyway. Alright. The cure, was it far worse? Price of progress. Yeah, well, the price of progress is expensive, and, you know, I just don't want to get into all the examples of whether, well, what if the Romans had killed all the Thessians and all that. You know, we could go through all this math and figure out that maybe a genocide there would have been a good idea, and yeah, that genocide sucks because that killed all the intellectuals, and, you know, we could try to figure out which one was the right one. You know, maybe the world would not have been a pretty place if, you know, I was talking about the Incas the other night in Stick Camp, but yeah, what if the Incas did rule? Maybe it looks like in a lot of ways they had a better civilization, but again, it was run by a king and gods and religion and all this crap again, and so maybe it would have been totally suck if they weren't annihilated, because maybe that religion would have been even more holocaustic in its dronish, Borgish consumption and, you know, indoctrination of the human race. I mean, you can almost argue, like, you know, we talk about North Korea too, and just the idea of just when you think about how profoundly disconnected from reality the people living in the middle of North Korea are, how isolated they are, how disconnected from any human knowledge they are. You know, the substance of human enlightenment. And what you know, the weight of that crime, to force people into ignorance. Shit. Well, anyway. So sorry, long video. And such. It's still working. Yeah, 29 minutes, that ain't too bad. Got another 30 seconds to burn. Well, I guess I won't play. I mean, I think I hit all your points, but let me just play a little bit of this.
Sense of self-evidence about natalism, let's call it. I like the word procreation, you know, because it's like procreation in favour of creation. Because procreationalism is so deeply entrenched. That's a really hard job, even far more so than slave owning. But we talk about that.
Yeah, I just don't like your terminology, that it's self-evident. Okay, that's not what it is. It's delusion evident. Right? These things are based on delusions. You have to have some miscalculation, misfact. You have to have a wrong definition of reality in there somewhere to make that crap possible. All right, and to be pro-creation when you have a delusion about what creation is, like it's some sort of no-risk experiment, or that it automatically produces something. Well, if all it's producing is a heroin addict, that's creation, doesn't mean anything. Creation in and of itself is not a brilliant idea. If the creation comes at a cost, if Frankenstein is the product of your creation experiments, then your creation experiments deserve to be, the pitchforks in the fire and the whole, they deserve to be put out of business. They deserve to be unplugged. Yeah, I mean, they're bullshit. Plainly, simply.
Inventing all kinds of weird shit, really, which you referred to as these invisible flying monkeys, populating people's language, people's thinking. We do have to contend with the messiness of language and the fact that it's not clean. It is completely saturated in metaphor and
yeah, I know, we have to deal with that. Well, look, that's when you conceded. I mean, we both understand that. And you just have to use metaphors carefully and just recognize that when you're using a metaphor about value, you have to use your own values as examples. So, yeah, you make a metaphor of somebody getting harmed as a metaphor for value, but yeah, you're doing it inside the envelope of the bigger picture. So you're using the smaller picture to describe the bigger picture, which can always be dangerous, and you have to understand that. So yeah, we agree.
Then that's fine, but if someone's called on that, you should be able to demonstrate that that sense of something being evidential has other kinds of evidence available outside of yourself. Yeah, so it's not just self-evident; it's also empirically evident, and that's the other set of discussions, isn't it? In addition to the hearts and minds thing that we've talked about.
Yeah, well, that is the discussion. The hearts and minds thing is not going to be a heart, and it's never going to be a heart discussion. It's never going to be one that you can do heart. You don't heart this kind of shit, right? I mean, I don't heart my way into vegetarianism in the sense that there's nothing that I get from it. It's not going to feed my heart. It's not going to make my heart beat stronger or faster. It's a hard thing to accept. It's a shitty pill to swallow. So, it's not going to be comfortable to your organism, the truth. But it's not supposed to be. It doesn't have to be. There's no rule it can be. There's no expectation it should be. There's no reasonable expectation. There's only an unreasonable expectation that somehow the truth would be something we would like to hear. It would be fun to hear. It would be good news for us. No, there's no reason to think the truth is good news for us. Either as individuals, or as a kind, or as a thing, or as a entity, or as a form of matter, or whatever. Yeah, just more of this, I guess, here maybe.
It's getting better because the percentage of people who are starving is going down and down, and the number of people having certain diseases is going down and down and down, which is fine, but the population is going up and up and up. So yes, undoubtedly 70% are starving 100 years ago, and only 50% are starving now. That sounds great. 100 years ago there was 1 billion people, now there are 7 billion people by now.
Well, exactly. So by your calculation, there's way too many people suffering, and that's the bottom line, isn't it? We're paying way too high a price, and you still can't calculate for me. I'm still not hearing anything that says, what's the difference? Nobody's pleading. They don't see such an intrinsic value in the existence of these creature-y things that everybody really seriously says, well, we need to create more. We got to convert more of the universe into human beings, working at IBM. So yeah, let's just keep converting the whole universe into drones. Let's make a whole bunch more of Wall Streets and all this other crap, all this fucking bullshit. Let's turn every bit of matter into some sort of human, watching American Idol. Come on. Yeah, because it would be preposterous. It'd be a silly notion. How many of these things do you even need on this? What do we need? What's the number of humans that you really need? Yeah, that's right. You don't need 7 billion. You don't need 6 billion. I can't even imagine why I would need a billion. Why would I even need 100 billion of them? Why would I? Why would I? And that's all this is about. So we know that the real number, the real equation is that people have a biological function, and culture has taught them, tradition has taught them that this is what you are, this is what you do. And so that it isn't any better than some primitive tribe where they tattoo the kids at 13. You know, they permanently tattoo them. They poke and rip and tear their faces to pieces to tattoo them to make them one of the tribe. And that's all this is. That's all this procreation thing is. It's a goddamn ritual. It has nothing to do with anything rational or reasonable or anything that is required to be. You don't have to have a tattooed face to enjoy eating a banana and have a nice life. And you don't have to have kids to actualize yourself. And it's only because society and culture beats that notion into your head that you would somehow think that would be the way to go. And it's not even that they beat it into your head. I mean, culture makes a joke out of itself. I mean, culture is a laughable thing. How can people fall for any bit of it? You know, I mean, realistically, I mean, by the time I was 7 or 8 years old, I already knew I was living in something that was completely broken. The culture was completely idiotic. It was stupid. The priorities were idiotic. The whole thing smelled, it was dirty. I mean, you already knew it was broken. It had no credibility. Why would I trust any of it? I'd already seen places. I've seen totem poles. I saw actual totem poles. I touched them and I said, what, people did this shit? So you already knew they were just bullshit, and they were just making it up as they're going along. You're saying that's all they were doing? They just made up shit. They just made up a bunch of voodoo and nonsense, and they lived by it. So tradition has no credibility. And so you have to do a little better than that. And you certainly have to do better when your ego aspirations spill out into the existence of somebody else and put them in harm's way to satisfy some notion of purpose, some notion. Nothing you can demonstrate, nothing you can prove, nothing you can logically articulate and make sense out of. Just some notion I want, and that's supposed to be good enough. Well, no, it isn't good enough, and it's one of the victims I'm protesting, and I'm saying to all you walker buyers, all you passer buyers, when these victims are made, I'm just gonna say a little fuck you for standing by. Fuck you for not saying a goddamn thing. Fuck you for not doing a goddamn thing. Fuck you. Yeah. Sorry, but that's just the truth of it. Witness.